The roast was perfect, the setting elegant, but the air was thick with something uglier than silence. Silverware clinked against fine china, each sound sharp as a blade. The chandelier above shimmered like a relic from better days, casting golden flecks onto the polished mahogany table. My father's voice rumbled with pride, his deep baritone filling every corner of the dining room. "To Marcus," he declared, lifting his glass. "Vice President before 30. The Williams legacy is in good hands." Applause followed. My mother offered a soft smile, tilting her wineglass in delicate approval. I offered a quiet nod, barely audible in the grand space. I sat at the far end of the table, as always, present but not included. Not that I was surprised. Marcus leaned back in his chair, effortlessly confident, the golden boy who could do no wrong. His suit was bespoke, his cufflinks obnoxiously expensive. He basked in their admiration like a deity, accepting tribute. "You know," he said, turning toward me, "I always wondered how long you'd hang around that place, still flipping those little houses, or is it more of a charity thing?" I smiled, cool and measured. "Some of us build things quietly, Marcus. Not everyone needs a billboard." My mother chuckled softly, the kind that felt like judgment in a crystal glass. "Emily, darling, have you considered something more stable? We were talking earlier. It might be time to look into downsizing, maybe a nice apartment near Grant Park." "Downsizing?" I asked, my tone even. "Well," Gregory interrupted, placing his utensils down with precision, "the house was always meant to be transitional. A gift to help you get started, not a permanent arrangement." I straightened slightly in my seat. The house. My house. Inherited from my grandmother, written in ink and notarized. The only woman in this family who saw me, who believed in me. "She left it to me," I said plainly. Marcus laughed, one sharp note too loud. "Oh, come on, Em. You know how sentimental Grandma was. She probably forgot to amend the will properly." "She was very clear," I replied. Gregory reached into his briefcase and slid a manila envelope across the table. Its edges were crisp, its presence foreboding. "We've spoken with the family attorney," he said. "This is just a formal adjustment. Moving things back into the trust ensures long-term stewardship. It's best for everyone." Everyone, meaning Marcus. I didn't move to pick it up. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Not rage, clarity, like glass sharpening beneath sunlight. "I've maintained that house," I said. "Restored every inch, paid every tax. She wanted me there." "Sentiment doesn't trump legacy," my father replied curtly. "I think it's generous we're even helping you transition," my mother added. "We could have handled this through legal notice." For a moment, silence pressed against my ears. I could hear my heartbeat echo through my ribs. But louder than that was my grandmother's voice. "Never show your hand too soon." I reached slowly into my handbag, retrieving the brass keys I'd carried since her funeral. I turned them in my palm, then extended my hand and laid them gently on the table, right atop the manila envelope. "Thank you for dinner. The roast was lovely." Chairs shifted. My mother blinked. Marcus frowned, the air suddenly colder despite the warmth of the room. I stood and walked out without a glance back. Outside, the Chicago night met me with biting wind. I slid into my car, shut the door, and exhaled. No tears, no shaking, just resolve. I pulled out my phone, opened a secure thread. My thumb hovered, only for a second. "It's time. Execute tomorrow morning." They thought they had stripped me of everything, but they'd never even noticed what I was building. I stared at the screen, the glow of numbers reflected in my glasses, and let my fingers trail across the polished edge of my walnut desk. Outside the window, the early autumn sun cast long amber shadows across the backyard. Inside my home office, silence reigned. Unlike the silence of yesterday's dinner, this one was mine, owned, earned. Funny how they never asked what I did with my time, never wondered where I went when I wasn't doing much. I was invisible by design. 6 years ago, I walked out of my job at a commercial real estate firm, resignation letter clutched in my hand and doubt ringing in my ears. My manager had laughed. "Good luck playing Monopoly in real life, Emily," he'd said. "Hope you enjoy flipping cardboard dreams." I didn't respond. That was the last time I ever let someone narrate my ambition for me. Maria had been cleaning my grandmother's house for over a decade by then. We weren't friends, not yet. But she was the only one who asked, after I quit, if I was okay. I told her the truth, that I had no plan, just a gut instinct and a deed my grandmother had given me in secret. It was handwritten, the ink barely dry, tucked between yellowing letters and financial spreadsheets. Alongside it were documents. Zoning maps, undervalued lots, tax liens no one else had bothered with. She wanted you to have these, Maria had whispered. She said you see value where others don't. That was the moment we began. Maria introduced me to a struggling landlord in Southside trying to offload a duplex. It needed everything, roofing, wiring, plumbing, but the bones were solid. I poured in the last of my severance pay and gutted it room by room. Maria helped paint walls between her other shifts. We built equity with sweat and stubbornness. For months, I played the fool at family dinners, nodding, smiling, letting them joke about my career sabbatical. Marcus once compared me to a part-time blogger. Deborah asked if I was still doing that fixer-upper thing. I nodded. They didn't care enough to press. Meanwhile, I learned everything. Rezoning loopholes, off-market auctions, how to acquire property through trusts and shell corporations. I studied at night and negotiated by day. By the time Marcus made middle management, I owned 5 doors. When he hit vice president, I had 38. I kept my name off title whenever possible. I was a ghost in my own empire. But not to Grandma. Before she passed, she handed me a velvet pouch. Inside was a small brass key and a handwritten note. This unlocks more than a house. Don't ever let them take from you what they can't even see. Today, that key sat in a drawer behind me, nestled beside documents the family would never imagine existed. I clicked open my encrypted portfolio. A dashboard bloomed across my screen. Properties from Chicago to Indianapolis, each with photos, valuations, and net returns. 47 entries, valued just shy of $42 million, 0 cents. The family trust, last I checked, hovered around 28. I wasn't just doing side real estate. I was out building the dynasty they were clinging to. And the best part, I hadn't even started playing offense yet. My phone buzzed sharply against the desktop. I glanced down. They just pulled into the driveway. I didn't answer the door. I answered with power. The knocks were loud, impatient raps followed by the metallic squeal of the gate swinging open. I didn't move from my chair. The sunlight poured through the double-headed windows of my estate, dancing along the marble floor, casting everything in gold. My espresso steamed on the coaster beside me, untouched. I sipped slowly, savoring the calm before the chaos. "Emily?" Marcus's voice thundered down the hall. "Open this damn door." But I already had. The smart lock disengaged remotely 5 minutes earlier when I saw their black SUV inch past the security camera. Let them walk in. Let them see. They marched into my living room like they owned it. Gregory in his charcoal gray overcoat, face red with confusion, Deborah clutching her purse like a shield, Marcus fuming, tie askew, mouth moving faster than his thoughts. "What the hell is going on?" he spat. "Why is our mortgage frozen?" "Good morning," I said evenly, standing. Deborah's eyes darted across the room, taking in the sleek furnishings, the oil painting above the fireplace, the tasteful blend of steel and walnut. "This is your place?" I nodded. "Has been for years." Gregory stepped forward, waving a thick folder. "Bank records, something's wrong with the trust. We can't access equity lines. Our accounts are restricted." "I'm aware," I said. "You're aware?" Marcus exploded. "This is criminal. The firm can't process payroll until this is resolved." Behind them, Maria entered silently from the side hallway, setting a tray of coffee and pastries on the table. She gave me a small nod and retreated without a word. Gregory frowned at her, but said nothing. "I think you're confused," I continued, gesturing toward the couch. "Sit." They didn't move. "Robert," I said, tapping the speaker icon on my phone. A voice crackled to life. "Emily, you're on. Can you confirm the mortgage transfers on the Williams family trust properties?" "Yes," Robert said crisply. "All holdings secured under Emily Williams Holdings, LLC, are legally and independently controlled. The family trust has no current equity access or lien rights." "What?" Deborah gasped. "Thank you, Robert." I ended the call. Marcus stepped closer, eyes narrow. What are you playing at? Not playing, I said. Managing. I turned toward the console table, picked up my tablet and tapped the screen. The 85-inch display on the wall lit up with my digital dashboard. Columns of property photos, real-time valuations, rental income streams. Color-coded overlays marked ownership. Beneath the screen, a single tab opened. Client rent structures. He pointed. The building you work in, Marcus? The one at Wabash and 8th? Your firm leases for Midtown office properties. That's me. He blinked. And your law firm's new extension office, Dad? The marble one you're so proud of? It's under Goldline Holdings, also me. Gregory's mouth opened, but no words came. I swiped again. This portfolio? 47 properties, across 4 states, valued at over $40 million. Built silently while you all praised Marcus and asked if I'd found a nice little apartment yet. Deborah sank onto the couch like her knees had given out. I continued, voice steady. For 6 years, you treated me like a burden, an afterthought. You thought you were cutting me out of something when really, you were never in it. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then I turned to the sideboard and lifted a crisp leather folder. I handed it to Gregory. What's this? He murmured. Your lease, I replied. Your home is now under my LLC. So is your summer cabin. And your golf club membership. Technically, that's on a parcel I acquired last year. You're evicting us? Deborah whispered. No, I said, holding up 3 identical folders and setting them neatly on the table. You have until Friday. You could have heard a pin drop. When pedestals crumble, the fall is never graceful. They didn't sit long. The silence made them restless. Deborah fidgeted with her bracelet. Marcus paced behind the sofa. Gregory stared at the portfolio on screen like it had personally betrayed him. I leaned back in my chair, crossing one leg over the other, and tapped again on the tablet. Let me tell you a story. Maria entered quietly and placed a fresh cup of tea beside me. She didn't look at them, only at me. That silent trust was louder than any words. I bought my first property for $58,000, I said, a rundown duplex no one wanted. Water damage, cracked foundation, graffiti on the walls. It was in a zip code none of you had ever driven through. Deborah scoffed faintly. I poured everything into it, I continued. Time, savings, labor. Maria helped with the painting and the bookkeeping. In fact, she's held a 15% stake in every property since then. Deborah's head snapped up. She what? Maria finally looked up, her voice even. I believed in her when no one else did. Gregory's brow furrowed. How did you even afford to scale this? I smiled faintly. Partnerships, loans with favorable leverage, reinvested profits, seller financing, tax liens, distressed assets. I learned everything you refused to teach me. He blinked, and I could see it, an edge of discomfort where his pride used to sit. You always said business is about leverage, I added softly, meeting his gaze. You taught me that. And I listened. Marcus threw up his hands. This is insane. You can't just play Monopoly with people's lives. You're right, I said. Which is why I made sure everything was legally sound, transparent, documented, audited. Deborah's eyes narrowed. You've been plotting this. No, I replied. I've been surviving. I stood and walked to the antique credenza, opening a drawer and pulling out an envelope. This was the first cash flow statement I ever made. It was a loss. I was terrified. Grandma looked at the numbers and told me to frame it. I handed it to Gregory. He didn't take it. You never asked what I did with my days. Never once, in 6 years. You were too busy polishing Marcus's medals. Deborah finally stood. Don't make this about resentment. It's about hierarchy, I said, sharper now. About the pedestal you placed yourselves on and shoved me off from. But the view's different from here. Gregory's jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. No, I replied. I'm being precise. This isn't revenge. It's restructure. Restructure? Marcus laughed bitterly. You think you can cut us out of the family legacy? There is no legacy, I said flatly. Only an illusion of one. The real estate you leaned on was depreciating. The trust was mismanaged. You were hemorrhaging wealth while congratulating yourselves. I built what you pretended to have. Deborah's hands trembled slightly. And now what? We're tenants? Business is business, isn't it, Father? Gregory said nothing. Then Marcus muttered under his breath, "The family lawyers will undo this. You'll see." I turned to him, calm as a blade. "I hired them last year. They work for me now." They finally heard my voice, because this time I wasn't speaking. I was showing. The estate was quiet after they left. Too quiet. No slamming doors, no raised voices, just a soft hum of air conditioning and the distant rustle of trees against glass. I stood alone in the sunlit atrium, staring at the marble tile where Marcus had nearly thrown his phone in frustration. Funny, just last year, he joked that I probably couldn't afford groceries. "Miss Emily," Maria's voice was gentle behind me, "they're rattled." I turned, managing a smile. "Let them sit with it." She tilted her head. "And you?" "I'm ready." We walked together toward my office, the heels of my shoes clicking softly against the floor. The digital dashboard still glowed from the morning confrontation. I tapped the screen and updated 3 of the lease statuses. The dates were set. No one would be left guessing. Maria glanced at the display. "You're consolidating." "Positioning," I corrected. "If they come at me legally or publicly, I want my holdings streamlined." She gave a small nod of approval. "And the new offers?" I opened my inbox. 3 unread messages blinked at me. One from a senior partner at Blue Ridge Developments asking for a call. Another from Whitmore Holdings suggesting a joint project downtown. The last, a LinkedIn message, was from an executive at the Henderson Group. Subject line, "Private Acquisition Inquiry." "They're watching now," I murmured. Maria smiled. "About time." I spent the next 2 hours combing through due diligence reports, adjusting portfolio dashboards, and confirming title transfers. Maria moved in and out with legal documents and signature pages. The house, once a symbol of guilt and expectation, had become a control center. My phone buzzed, a message preview lit up the screen. "Marcus, can we talk alone?" I stared at it for a long moment. He had never asked for privacy, never for understanding. Always orders, always barbs. I typed a simple response. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m., front terrace." After Maria left for the evening, I took the old keys from my desk drawer, the ones I'd laid on the table at dinner. I walked them outside and dropped them into the donation box of the neighborhood women's shelter. They'd serve someone better there. By twilight, I stood at the edge of the cemetery, gravel crunching beneath my heels. Her grave looked exactly as it always had. Clean, dignified, set beneath the old maple. "I did it," I whispered. "They see the power now. One day, maybe they'll see me." I knelt to brush away a leaf. For a fleeting moment, I wished she could see the empire her whispers had helped build. The blueprint had always been hers. I just followed it. As I stood, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. Henderson Group. "You don't need to raise your voice to destroy someone. You just need a judge and a signature." Lewis Legal's headquarters smelled like leather and precision. The boardroom was sleek, windowed, high above the waking city. I arrived before anyone else, the silence giving me time to rehearse the strike I had waited years to deliver. Robert Chen arrived next, briefcase in hand, glasses slightly askew like always. "They're going to scream," he said as he pulled out the paperwork. "And let them," I replied, taking the seat at the head of the table. Maria joined us minutes later, carrying a slim black folder. "Gregory tried to refinance the Morgan estate. Quietly. 2 days ago." My jaw tensed. Was it flagged? Flagged, recorded, and reversed. But it confirms he suspects something. Robert placed the emergency injunction documents before me. "All documentation is here. Titles, proof of ownership, outstanding financial links, and the conflict of interest disclosures. If you sign, we file this within the hour." I scanned the final page, then looked up. "And Judge Barlow?" "Is scheduled for 11:15, she's clean. No connections to the Williams family. Known for efficiency." I signed the affidavit with one fluid motion. Good, let's move. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. Or maybe I was simply warmer, fueled by years of suppressed fury and calculation. Judge Erica Barlow was younger than I expected, but her eyes were sharp and unamused by theatrics. She reviewed the file in silence, flipping through pages as the clerk typed behind her. "You've been thorough, Miss Williams," she finally said, glancing over her glasses. "What do you expect the opposing counsel to argue?" "Or I'm being vindictive," I said flatly. "But facts are not emotions. The financial entanglements are real. The risk of fraudulent transfers is clear. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for protection." She tapped her pen once, then nodded. "I'll approve a temporary freeze on all assets directly or indirectly linked to Gregory and Marcus Williams, effective immediately for a period of 14 days. They may contest in a formal hearing on day 10. Maria exhaled softly beside me. I didn't move. Judge Barlow handed me the signed order. "Good luck, Miss Williams. I have a feeling you won't need it." Back at my office, we prepared the notices. Each was sealed in crisp white envelopes, one for Gregory, one for Deborah, one for Marcus. Each carried the legal weight of their undoing. As I slid the last envelope into the outgoing tray, I whispered, "For every time they called me soft." By evening, the phone rang. "Gregory." I let it ring once before answering. No greeting. "What the hell have you done?" His voice thundered through the receiver. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. "What you taught me," I said quietly. "Play to win. The first crack always comes from the one who thinks he's unshakable." Marcus leaned against the glass wall of his office, watching the city lights flicker like failing signals. His phone vibrated again. Another denied transaction. That made 3 today. Lines of credit were freezing faster than he could explain to his finance team. "Sir?" His CFO knocked gently. Capital One pulled their support. They cited the asset freeze. And Bancor just requested clarification on our collateral structure. Marcus didn't respond. He just nodded, waved the man away, and slowly sank into his leather chair. His father had told him to stay calm, to act like it was a bluff, that Emily was just playing emotional games. But this didn't feel like a game. A notification blinked on his screen. Emily had uploaded the amended lease contract for his firm's office space. Again, it sat there like a ticking bomb. He hadn't signed it. Not yet. He remembered mocking her once. "You and that little spreadsheet business," he had laughed at a Thanksgiving dinner. "Hope you can still afford rent." He ran a hand down his face. The irony now stung sharper than any insult. That evening, he sat at a rooftop bar, whiskey untouched, staring blankly at the skyline. The wind bit colder than usual. He pulled out his phone. "Marcus, are you home?" "Emily, yes." "Marcus, can we talk?" "Emily, come to the back entrance. Maria will let you in." When he arrived, the estate was dimly lit, serene, almost surgical in its silence. Maria nodded curtly, offering him a glass of water, and disappeared before he could decline. Emily sat in the sunken lounge, laptop closed, eyes expectant but unreadable. He sat across from her, tried to say something, anything, but the words clung to his throat. "I didn't know about the law firm building," he said eventually. She said nothing. "And I didn't think you'd actually go this far." Still, she remained quiet. He shifted, frustrated. "I'm not trying to fight you, Emily." "Then why are you here?" He paused. "I just needed to see it, hear it from you." Her eyes didn't soften. "You already did." He sighed, pressing both hands together. "You know what Dad's like. He thinks this is some war. He says you'll back down." "And what do you think?" she asked. Marcus didn't answer. The question burned more than he expected. Emily stood, walked over to the side table, and picked up a folder. She placed it gently in front of him. "The lease," she said. "It'll stabilize your cash flow. You sign, and I don't pull the space." Marcus stared at the folder, then up at her. "I'm not asking you to pick a side," she added, "but you don't have to drown with him." She left the room before he could reply. He sat there long after, fingers hovering over the contract, vision swimming with uncertainty. Every number on the page made sense, except for the part where he had to admit she'd won. That he needed her. His phone buzzed. "Gregory?" He let it ring once before picking up. "You met with her?" the voice barked through the speaker. Marcus didn't answer. Gregory growled. "You remember who your family is. You remember where your loyalty lies. They were kings in private, but I took the fight public." Emily adjusted the collar of her blazer as the cameras focused in, her posture firm but expression unreadable. The studio lights buzzed faintly above her, but she didn't flinch. Across from her sat a smiling anchor, script in hand, unaware of the storm about to break. Jenna Marlowe watched from behind the glass partition, her tablet flashing with headlines cued for release. She was precise, relentless. Exactly what Emily needed. This is the woman who quietly built a real estate portfolio spanning 4 states, the anchor began, and now she's rewriting the narrative of legacy and ownership in Chicago's elite circles. Emily offered a controlled smile. It wasn't about rewriting, just correcting the parts they omitted. Behind the scenes, Jenna hit send on the first wave. Within minutes, Business Daily pushed their featured article, "Meet the Quiet Heiress Who Outsmarted Her Dynasty." It wasn't just about Emily's success. Jenna had ensured the piece dove deeper, revealing how Morgan Holdings, under Gregory's influence, had suppressed Olivia Williams' original will, the one that transferred full property rights to Emily. The article showed side-by-side signatures, notarized dates, and a quiet correction filed by the probate office 2 years prior. Phones buzzed across the city. Gregory's morning at the Metropolitan Club was interrupted by whispering glances. His usual circle avoided eye contact. One investor slid him the phone screen. "Did you know about this?" the man asked, half accusing, half fearful. Gregory's hand trembled slightly as he read the headline. "Fabrication," he snapped. "It's a PR stunt." "Then sue," someone muttered. Gregory stormed out. Back at Emily's estate, the team debriefed in her office. "The feedback is explosive," Jenna said. 5 million views in 3 hours, syndicated nationally. Emily nodded, eyes steady. "And Morgan Holdings?" "They've lost 2 major retail partners today. Stockholders are calling emergency meetings." Maria poured tea in the corner, smiling faintly. "About time." Marcus hadn't called, but he hadn't defended Gregory either. That silence was louder than anything. By noon, every business outlet had picked it up. Heiress turns real estate mogul. Old money, new rules. Family Feud goes corporate. Emily scrolled through the headlines, expressionless. This wasn't about fame, it was exposure. She remembered her father once saying, "Publicity is poison. Once you're in the press, you're not in control." He was right. But now she was the one holding the syringe. Later that evening, an envelope arrived, heavy, sealed in gold foil. Emily opened it without ceremony. Inside, a formal subpoena. Gregory was challenging Olivia's will in court. She held the paper between 2 fingers, expression unreadable. The battle had moved into the light. You can bury a knife in silence, but it still cuts. Emily stared at the screen, her eyes narrowing as Calvin Reese's name scrolled across the court's digital docket. Gregory hadn't wasted time. The counterstrike had arrived. Clean, brutal, and clinical. Exactly as he'd always taught her. Court is war. No feelings, only outcomes. Maria stood beside her, jaw clenched, reading the motion aloud. Petitioner accuses Miss Emily Williams of estate fraud, undue influence over the decedent, and concealment of material financial interests. Emily didn't blink, but her fingers curled slowly into fists. An hour later, they were seated in the legal war room, a sterile windowless space at Blue West Legal, walls lined with whiteboards and timelines. Robert Chen circled keywords on the latest leak. Old therapy records, high school suspensions, a dropped semester in college. "They're painting you unstable," he said. "Emotional, erratic, manipulative." Jenna's voice crackled through the conference speaker. "Press is holding, for now, but one blog already ran with heiress hysteria." Emily stood silently, then paced to the edge of the room. "None of this changes the will." "No," Robert said, "but it muddies the waters. He's not trying to win, he's trying to make you drown." Maria handed her a glass of water. "They pulled my employment file, asking why I stayed with you after your grandmother died, like loyalty is a crime now." Emily looked at her, guilt flashing for a moment. "They're going to dig through everything." "That means you're close to something worth burying," Maria replied. The courthouse lobby buzzed with voices and footsteps. Gregory stood at the far end, Calvin Reese beside him. Silver hair, navy pinstripe suit, a smirk that never quite reached the eyes. He didn't look at Emily. That would have been too generous. He looked through her. In the courtroom, Judge Barlow's tone was razor sharp. I will not tolerate theatrics. This courtroom is not a playground for generational warfare. Both sides nodded, tension stretching thin. When it ended, Emily stepped outside, the wind colder than she remembered. Maria waited on the bench. Inside a stall in the restroom, Emily sat alone. Hands trembling, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Red-rimmed eyes wide with disbelief. Her voice cracked as she whispered to herself, "He's going to bury me. If I don't end this now." She didn't cry. Not really. Just enough to feel it snap inside her, like something raw tearing open. By the time she stepped back into the war room, her posture was steel. I want every deed re-verified, every contract reviewed. We fight back clean, but we hit hard. That evening, as the team cleared out, Maria walked in holding a worn leather envelope, edges curled with age, sealed with wax. She gave this to me years ago, Maria said quietly. Said to wait. Until it got ugly. Emily stared at the envelope, something tightening in her chest. Her grandmother had always known this day would come. The dead can't testify, but they can still speak. Emily held the envelope with both hands, afraid to break the wax seal. It felt heavier than parchment and ink should, like it carried all the weight her grandmother had never spoken aloud. Maria watched quietly from across the library, seated in the same armchair Olivia used to occupy during autumn mornings. When it's darkest, Emily murmured almost to herself, "Look for the last light." She peeled the wax carefully, unfolding the yellowed pages inside. Her breath caught. It wasn't just a letter. It was a codicil. Handwritten, dated, notarized separately from the main will. It outlined that in the event of familial dispute, all real property and executive control over Olivia's holdings would defer to Emily without board consent. The wording was clear, ironclad. And then there was the letter. "If they ever push you out," Olivia wrote in her slanted script, "know that I pulled you back in. I saw them for what they were long before you did. You don't owe them peace, my dear, only truth." Emily read the paragraph again and again until her hands stopped shaking. An hour later she called Maria back in. "It's enough," she said. "Legally this changes everything." "And emotionally?" Maria asked. Emily didn't answer. That evening, under the deepening dusk, Deborah arrived at Emily's estate. She wore navy slacks and a silk blouse, pressed, immaculate, as always. Emily met her at the door, no words of greeting exchanged. They sat across from one another in the study. Between them, the codicil lay on the table. Deborah stared at it with a kind of frozen dread. "She left it," Emily said. "Notarized outside of the trust, in case things turned ugly." "She always had contingency plans," Deborah said, voice low, "even for her own children." Emily waited. No accusations, no anger, just silence, and the chance for something real to break through. Deborah finally looked up. "I knew about the pressure Gregory put on her, the calls, the threats to cut her off from the rest of the family. I stayed quiet because I thought I was protecting Marcus. I didn't know what else he might lose if this turned into war." "It's already a war," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Deborah's face softened. "You were never weak, Emily. Just quiet. And I was too much a coward to see the difference." Emily stood. For a moment she hesitated, but then stepped forward and wrapped her arms, stiffly, around her mother. Deborah didn't pull away. It was the first time in years. Later that night, a message buzzed on Emily's phone. She read the court notification aloud. "The hearing is in 5 days." I walked into court alone. But I wasn't the one on trial. The courtroom felt cavernous, sunlight slanting through tall windows, across polished wood pews. Journalists tapped away on tablets, smartphones flashed discreetly, and the murmur of anticipation hummed beneath the silence. I wore a dark navy suit, simple, unassuming, but every step felt deliberate, anchored in purpose. I clutched the folder of evidence in my hand, heart steady, mind razor-focused. Truth cuts slower, but deeper. Judge Barlow sat behind the bench, her expression unreadable but poised. On the plaintiff's side, Gregory and his attorney, Calvin Reese, watched me. Reese flipped through his notes, the glint of determination on his face visible even from a distance. Gregory rose first, shoulders tense. "Your Honor," he began, voice firm, "this isn't simply about property. It's about my daughter's character." He paused, gaze sharpened when it landed on me. "I stand before you to correct a family relic abused by spite and vengeance. Miss Williams has weaponized her inheritance for revenge, not restitution." A learner passed through the congregation. Cameras snapped. I leaned back on the edge of the witness well, absorbing his words without flinching. When my attorney rose, she spoke calmly. "We will prove that Gregory Williams subverted Olivia Williams' last wishes, hiding codicils, manipulating executors, and distorting trust provisions. This was never about sentiment. It was about control." Next, Maria took the stand. She wore a simple blouse and returned every gaze with grace. Under oath, she recounted how she and Grandma had discovered documents years ago. She described late-night discussions about property valuations and how Olivia trusted her to stand by Emily in case things escalated. Then came the business appraiser, an expert witness who explained valuations on the portfolio, market comparisons, income streams, demographic trends. The numbers were clear. Emily's empire outpaced anything referenced in traditional family documents. The real turning point came when Carla stood. She was calm, prepared. On cross, she delivered the timeline, dates of document creation, notarization stamps, records of phone calls between Gregory and probate officials. She produced internal emails confirming attempts to suppress the codicil. The courtroom stilled as she spoke. Gregory's face flushed. He leaned forward, open-mouthed. Then came my brother. I watched David from the corner of my eye as he took the stand. He fidgeted, tie tight, cheeks pale, but met my gaze with a hesitant honesty. Reese pressed him about his role in the trust administration. The pressure was palpable. Finally he exhaled and spoke. "I was told by my father to dispose of certain documents. The codicil, you know which one. To put it back where it belongs. I did it." His voice broke. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emily." Gasps echoed. Gregory's jaw clenched. David glanced at me, a flicker of regret in his eyes. Judge Barlow tapped her gavel once. "The court will now recess. I'll be reviewing sealed evidence tonight. We reconvene in the morning." The courtroom stood frozen. Even the reporters quieted. In that breath-held moment, the only sound seemed to be the soft shuffle of papers. The more he spoke, the more he unraveled. The second day of the hearing dawned gray and wind-bitten. Appropriate, Emily thought, for what was coming. The courtroom was already full when she arrived, cameras perched on shoulders, microphones hidden like birds in trees. Today wasn't just a legal hearing, it was a spectacle. She took her place without glancing at Gregory. He was already talking to Reese, his tone unusually clipped. He hadn't expected yesterday's revelations. He certainly wasn't ready for today's. Her father once told her, "Never admit control the narrative." Judge Barlow entered promptly at 9. "Let's proceed," she said. Emily's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, we submit into evidence a notarized codicil to the will of Olivia Williams, dated 2 months after the original document was filed." The bailiff passed copies forward. The courtroom rustled with whispers. "This codicil," the attorney continued, "reassigns all real property and executive holdings from the General Trust to Miss Emily Williams, effective immediately upon the decedent's passing. It was witnessed, notarized, and filed independently." Gregory shook his head subtly, a tiny twitch. "Furthermore," the attorney said, turning slowly toward the gallery, "we call to the stand Evelyn Moore, Olivia Williams' sister." Gregory's jaw dropped. The doors at the back opened, and Evelyn walked in slowly, her cane tapping rhythmically on the polished floor. She wore a gray tweed suit and a brooch shaped like an owl, the one Olivia used to wear during board meetings. Emily watched her father try to hide his surprise, fail, and recover too late. Evelyn took the stand with effort but spoke clearly. "I was there when Olivia signed the codicil. I was one of 2 witnesses." She said, "This one's for Emily. She's the only one who never asked for it." Evelyn paused. 2 weeks later, Gregory came to the house while Olivia was out. He took the original copy from her desk drawer. I saw him throw it in the fireplace. He said the lawyers would never know. Reese jumped up. Your Honor, objection, no corroborating evidence. I'm a witness, Evelyn snapped, and I kept a copy. The room turned electric. Gregory stood. You're lying, he barked. You're senile. You were never close to her. Emily's hands curled over her notes, heart pounding. This wasn't just loss of control. This was implosion. Judge Barlow slammed the gavel. Mr. Williams, that will be enough. Gregory didn't stop. She's making this up to protect her precious niece. You can't just let them rewrite history because they've decided I'm the villain. Bailiff. Judge Barlow rose to her feet. Mr. Williams, you are hereby held in contempt of court. The crowd gasped. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. 2 officers moved forward as Gregory's face went crimson. This is my family, he roared. She's nothing without me. The courtroom erupted, camera shudders, whispers, gasps. Emily sat still, unmoving, as her father was escorted out in handcuffs. His legacy burning behind him. He didn't apologize, he just lowered his eyes, and that was enough. The judge's chambers were quiet, no gavel, no press, just the muffled ticking of an antique clock and the soft creak of leather chairs. Gregory sat across from Emily, flanked by his attorney, looking like a man who had finally stopped struggling against a tide he could no longer outswim. His hands were folded in front of him, the same way they had been when he'd once lectured her on fiscal responsibility and the cost of being emotional in business. Now, he didn't speak, didn't look her in the eye, but when Judge Barlow read aloud the negotiated terms, his total withdrawal from the family trust, relinquishment of board seats, and waiver of all future claims, Gregory simply nodded. It reminded Emily of the day her grandmother died, when he'd stood at the grave in silence, shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed with something that looked like guilt. This was the same man, but not quite. What pride hadn't stripped away, defeat had. Outside the chambers, Deborah waited, dressed in black, a scarf draped neatly across her shoulders. She didn't speak either, not to Gregory, not to Emily. Only when they passed each other did she stop, briefly, and place a hand on Emily's arm. A silent gesture, and then she walked away. Later that afternoon, the family's former office was emptied. Files gone, nameplate removed. Carla stood at the threshold, box in hand. Emily approached. It's yours, she said. The house I showed you in Lincoln Park, it's not alone. Carla blinked, stunned. Emily, I can't. You already have. They hugged, tentatively like people finding balance after a storm. Back at the estate, David knocked on the door just before sunset. No fanfare, no press. Just him, tie loosened, jacket wrinkled. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I want to learn, if you let me. Emily studied him for a long moment. Start with listening, she said. That's something our family never mastered. He nodded, not offended. Relieved. As twilight darkened the edges of the room, Emily opened the letter that had arrived by courier. Just one line, in her father's hand. You were always stronger than I admitted. She let the paper fall gently onto her desk, lips pressing into a line neither bitter nor sweet. Her phone buzzed. Jenna's voice came through, brisk and bright. There's a syndicate in St. Louis asking if you'll take over their Midwest operations. They want leadership. A woman with vision and nerve. Do you want to lead? Emily looked out at the lights blinking across the city skyline, the empire she built, brick by invisible brick. She didn't answer. Not yet. Winning doesn't heal everything, but it gives you the space to begin. The garden gate creaked open with a sound so familiar it was almost a welcome. Emily stepped onto the stone path of Olivia's sanctuary, the same one she'd walked countless times as a child, trailing her grandmother through lavender rows and tomato vines. Now, it was hers, and more importantly, it was open. The brass plaque shimmered in the soft morning sun. Olivia Williams Memorial Garden for Quiet Growth and Fierce Hope. A small crowd had gathered, neighborhood children, a few city officials, an alderwoman who had grown up 2 blocks away and cried softly during the ribbon cutting. Emily kept her remarks brief. She didn't need to say much. The place spoke for itself. "You'll know you've won," Olivia had once said, "when you no longer need to win." That afternoon, Emily signed over 30% of Morgan Holdings into a public education trust, focused on women in underserved communities. The headlines the next day read, "From heiress to architect, Emily Williams rebuilds legacy with purpose." Carla's housewarming was small, intimate, just a handful of friends, some of the business staff, a tray of homemade cookies, and one bottle of Prosecco that no one remembered to chill. But it didn't matter. The moment came quietly, Carla opening the manila folder, pulling out the deed and seeing her name in crisp print at the top. She said nothing. She didn't need to. But Emily noticed how she kept one hand resting gently on the countertop for balance, like the ground itself might suddenly give way. "Welcome home," Emily whispered, just before embracing her. David had started working again, not in any of the Williams Link ventures. He'd taken a consulting job with a women-led tech incubator in Logan Square. Emily had offered to connect him to her network, but he declined. "I want to earn my own phone calls," he'd said. That night, Emily sat alone in her new office at the Morgan estate. The family portrait, once dusty, stiff, and ceremonial, now hung behind her desk. Someone had restored it. She hadn't asked who. But this time, beneath it, there was a new brass plate. "Emily A. Williams, Chairwoman." She didn't smile. She just stared, long and hard. Not at the painting, but at everything that had led to it. The rooms she'd been told not to enter. The titles they said didn't suit her. The expectations she'd burned to the ground. Her desk phone buzzed softly. She answered. A young voice came through, nervous, breathless. "Miss Williams, we just got an inquiry from Washington. Big, government level. They want to know if you're open to a regional infrastructure role, leading public-private housing initiatives." Emily leaned back, the echo of her grandmother's laughter brushing the edge of her memory. She looked at the skyline through the wide, floor-length windows and thought, not of revenge, but of reach. "Let's hear what they have to say," she replied. "Not all queens need a throne. Some build empires in silence." The ballroom shimmered with gold accents and soft violin music, but Emily barely noticed. The weight of the evening wasn't in the decor, or the polished shoes that clicked across the marble. It was in the moment, in what it represented. As she stood near the stage, a dozen cameras aimed her way, Emily caught a flicker of memory. That first Sunday dinner, the roast, the praise for Marcus, the way her father had looked at her when he said, "Know your place." This was her place. Jenna smiled from the wings as Emily's name was announced. "Our final honoree tonight, Emily A. Williams, for her contributions to real estate, education, and civic leadership." Applause thundered as Emily walked to the podium. She didn't carry notes. Her speech was as simple as it was deliberate. "I was raised to believe that being quiet meant being weak, but some of the strongest voices I ever heard didn't raise their volume. They raised their standards. Legacy isn't about inheritance. It's about what we choose to build when no one's watching." She paused, scanning the crowd, not searching for anyone, but acknowledging everyone. When a reporter shouted from the press corner, "Any comment on the family drama from last year?" Emily simply smiled. Silence was her answer, and it spoke louder than any press release ever could. Later that night, in the garden her grandmother once nurtured, Emily stood beneath the soft glow of string lights. Carla approached, holding something delicate in her palm. "She told me to keep it until you forgave yourself," Carla whispered. Emily opened her hand to find Olivia's locket, small, weathered, etched with a flower she used to trace as a child. "I didn't think I needed it anymore," Emily said softly. "You don't," Carla replied, "but you earned it." Across the garden she saw David standing by the gate. He didn't come closer. Just offered a nod, brief, respectful, and at peace. Then he slipped away into the night. Near the fountain, a group of young women gathered, each holding program booklets and hope in their eyes. One hesitated before approaching Emily. "What advice would you give someone just starting?" the girl asked. Emily didn't hesitate. "Your voice doesn't have to be loud," she said, "just unshakable." The cameras flashed again, less aggressively now, more like punctuation marks to a long, powerful sentence. As the lights faded, Emily turned toward the far end of the garden, where the city skyline rose like a crown of steel and glass. She took a breath. "I'm just getting started." After years of being dismissed, silenced, and betrayed, she didn't just reclaim what was hers, she dismantled the throne that once loomed over her. Justice came not with shouts, but with documents, strategy, and the quiet, unrelenting power of truth. When injustice is met with unwavering resolve, the final verdict doesn't just punish, it rewrites the legacy. Like a shadow retreating at dawn, the lies fell away, and what remained was a woman who never needed to raise her voice to win. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and comment below. Type 1 if you felt empowered, type 2 if you still think justice should have gone further.